Just like we saw today, there was a massive spike in gold prices. There's going to soon be a massive spike in oil prices, in my opinion. I'm going to talk about why that's going to be, and it's for all the wrong reasons. This is the Strait of Hormuz. There's Iran. And I've been telling you for a while that this war is getting closer and closer with Iran. Israel and America versus Iran. Who knows if Russia gets involved with it when it happens, but this is something that you have to wrap your head around, believing or understanding that this actually could happen. People typically don't want to think about something that insane. If there's to be a war with Iran, it's almost certainly going to be soon. And please click like on the video. I'm trying to help people like us who are about to get blindsided to not get blindsided. But there's a seven-headed snake of Iran, their influence, and that includes things like Gaza, the West Bank, Hezbollah there in Lebanon. You'll remember they're the ones whose pagers exploded recently. There's small militias in Iraq, and then of course there's Iran. And then Syria fell. That was Bashar al-Assad, and he was the one who gassed his own people, and he's just living comfortably in Russia now. And the people who took over, it's kind of like the devil you know versus the devil you don't. Bashar al-Assad was horrible. His replacement has ties to extremist groups, Al-Qaeda even, direct ties. And the only other head of the snake that I didn't mention was Yemen, which is right now in a hot war with America. But as I told you, they're constricting closer and closer to the point where they are going to make a move on Iran. It's been building up for quite some time. We've clearly watched it approach further and further. And with the fall of Syria, that accelerated things. Now you've got Yemen, the last barrier before Iran. If it wasn't for the fact that the United States has 20 stealth bombers, 6 of which are here. This is Diego Garcia. It's a small island shared between British and American forces. This is where 6 of our stealth bombers are right now. Within striking distance, they've done missions from here over Afghanistan, and they're out of the range of any of the ordnance that Yemen or Hezbollah has right now, at least until they can get some weapons from their co-sponsors like Russia, China, and even North Korea, who, by the way, time out, they have artificial intelligence now in their suicide drones in North Korea. These are suicide drones flying around making their own decisions. We're getting so close to Skynet that it's scary as... Plus, you know that there's 2 carrier battle groups that have gone to Middle East, close enough to strike Iran, obviously. And with the battle groups, you forget that there's a whole bunch of submarines underneath them, too, at the same time. And a lot of times the submarines have more ordnance on them than some of these boats. But when a war gears up, when a war gets closer to actually breaking out, this is what it looks like. You're going to see a ton of propaganda. And a lot of times the propaganda is to look strong when you're not strong. It's not unheard of that a lot of these missiles will be fake. They did that in World War II with a whole bunch of inflatable tanks. They're just basically bouncy castles to try and trick the enemy or confuse the enemy or hide the information. The point being that when this breaks out, and it sucks, but it's not how you want to make money. When this breaks out, the price of oil is going to spike dramatically, of course. And if you can get your head around to just ignore all the horribleness that comes out of it, then you're going to want to land on your feet. You do that by investing well in any situation, in any environment, no matter how gross. You invest well by getting involved with some oil production companies before the price of oil spikes up dramatically. These are the missile tunnels that Iran has. They have many missile tunnels, all just like this one. And this is something that you would want a lot of stealth bombers for, because the types of bombs they drop can actually penetrate into these bunkers. And what Iran has said is that they're going to strike back any provocation. They're going to hit American proxies and American interests all over the world. And there are American troops, American even CIA workers all over the world. And Iran has enough of a network to really strike out at a lot of these vulnerabilities. We've had a lot of tough talk, and you can watch how that tough talk accelerates or builds up. That's how you know you're getting closer and closer to war. There's always going to be a big propaganda march. You have to have your people get behind you with whatever Vietnam you want to get into. Right now, the USS Harry Truman is in the Red Sea, handling operations against Houthi rebels. And now the USS Carl Vinson is on its way to the area. We're going to have 2 carrier strike groups in the region. And as I told you, lots of submarines come with that. Plus, you're going to know that at the same time they're launching cyber warfare attacks. If you remember back when there's the Stuxnet virus and they took out the Iranian nuclear program with a virus, they can do that kind of stuff. And that's part of bringing your submarines and your airplanes and your boats closer. You're also doing things behind the scenes, a lot more clandestine, and sometimes those are the most important ones. So in the Strait of Hormuz, oil tankers carry about 17 million barrels of oil every single day through the strait. And that works out to about 20 to 30% of the world's entire consumption. And if you have a disruption of oil that affects 2% of oil, the price of oil goes up a lot more than 2%, maybe as much as 20%. What happens when Iran decides that they're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz? Oil prices are going to go ballistic. And it won't even be about the price. And I've talked about this in my Upthinking book. It's sometimes not even about the price. It's about being able to acquire the thing at all. You watch when there's not enough oil for everybody, what happens with a lot of these militaries. It's going to get pretty serious, pretty heavy, pretty quickly. And in terms of all the oil coming out of the Persian Gulf, that represents 88% of the oil coming out of the Persian Gulf. And there are not a lot of other good options other than just big ships with oil on it just coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. There's not a lot of good pipelines or a lot of roadway structures, etc. The best way to do it is by boat. And a lot of the growth for the world now is going to come out of India. It used to be China. They're still growing, but much slower than they used to. They were growing incredibly quickly, double digits at one point. But now that they're slowing down, they're being replaced not only in productive capacity from India, but also in population too, by the way. But when OPEC cuts production, that'll make oil prices rise. And they do about 28.85 million barrels of oil per day. This is from Y charts, and it shows you that OPEC's production has seemed pretty consistent, and they just try and manipulate oil prices, but anything that's artificial like that is always temporary, so they'll try to make prices go higher, and sometimes it'll backfire. And they get way too much credit, especially now that it's not just about OPEC anymore. It's not just about OPEC Plus. It's about shale oil, fracking in America. As of November 1st, 2024, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve held approximately 387.2 million barrels of crude oil. So how much oil do we use per day in America? About 20.5 million barrels per day. And it's a ridiculous scenario comparison where if there's a problem with oil, it's not like we'll still keep using the same amount, etc. I'm just saying, if you were, for the example, take the Strategic Petroleum Reserves based on the usage right now of America, then you're looking at about 19 days. It's actually less than 19 days before we would exhaust our whole supply. And of course, you always got unexpected disruptions like natural disasters. Hurricane Katrina was one you can think about. Accidents like the Deepwater Horizon explosion. Or there's a backlog at the refineries. People, I always talk about this where you say, well, why is the price of oil going down but the price of fuel is going higher? It's because the refineries get log jammed, or they try and rip you off because it's driving season. But it's usually about the choke point of the refinery. It takes them, regardless of the price of oil, it'll take them a lot of time to get that oil through and turn it into something that can be used as gasoline. And a weaker dollar, of course, is going to make the price of oil go higher. All commodities will go higher with a weaker dollar. And 2025 will be a year where the American dollar has a massive, significant decline in comparative value against other fiat currencies and against commodities and against things like money, which is gold. Gold was up $50, $45 yesterday. Today it's about $30. It's at 3,100 and whatever. It's going to go to 4,000 quickly. I talked about in a recent video, I think it's going to happen this year. And besides the decline in the US dollar, this will also be the year where real estate starts to come down pretty significantly. It will also be the year where gold and silver mining stocks finally get treated with respect. They get the valuation that they've earned. That is also predictive of how well they're going to do now with these higher prices of precious metals. And if you're a subscriber to my newsletter, you've seen the last 4 trades I made involved lithium, uranium, silver, and oil. Just ignore a lot of what OPEC's going to do. Just understand their intention. They're trying to keep prices high enough that it's good for them. But they're also sometimes, what Saudi Arabia has been doing recently, they'll push the price of oil down to put more pressure on their competition. Think of it like McDonald's selling hamburgers for 5 cents because they want to put Burger King out of business. And we're at a moment right now for my oil depletion clock countdown, which I put out years ago, and we're about to break below 44 years, I believe it is, and we're going to drop down to 43 years of oil left based on the daily usage rates of the world and how much oil there is. And people always argue about, well, you can't do that and you can't say this, whatever. The point is, it's going to be close enough. And I'll remind you that massive, absolutely inconceivable oil wars are going to break out. And they don't do that when the world runs out of oil. They do it as the world runs out of oil. And a lot of that is going to start, a lot of it has already started, but a lot of that posturing and strategic placements of things has already begun. But it will get more clearly obvious and it will get dramatically worse. But of course, one of the things I mentioned even on the oil depletion clock is that, yeah, there'll be new technologies, maybe some new finds. We'll find the oil, we'll get it out more efficiently, we'll use it better, we won't need as much because we'll go to more renewable resources. Yes, all of that will happen. But in the meantime, we still aren't there yet, and then as long as we're still so reliant on oil, there's all sorts of vulnerabilities that come with that. With the shale boom, this hydraulic fracking they call it, you're getting oil sideways. But the thing is, when you break into a fracking deposit, most of that oil comes out in the first year. It just sort of gushes. It's like poking a pin into a water balloon. And that's why a lot of these fracking finds and wells and resources, they suddenly have all this oil and then it depletes over time really quickly. And that's why they're having a lot of financial trouble. After the first boom, there's a bust there. So they need to keep finding and poking into more finds to keep the treadmill going. I'm going to tell you my list of a lot of the things that are going to push oil prices lower. Increased production from non-OPEC countries like the shale boom in America, technological advancements and efficiency gains, economic slowdowns, energy transition to renewable energy, improved fuel efficiency, building inventory levels. So my theory, my whole strategy on oil, I'll tell you it in a nutshell. Don't try and day trade, don't try and predict oil prices. There's too many moving parts, too many people have a big influence on oil prices. Too many interest groups could say, I want oil to be higher or lower, and they can affect that. A couple of kids with a drone could affect the price of oil. The usage of oil overall worldwide is not decreasing, it's increasing. And that's even as the global economies are getting a little bit weaker, but they're stronger in many emerging markets. So strong that they in fact will actually overpower the lack of growth coming from Western countries. There's more people and they're going to be using more oil, just as always, but there's other alternatives now, such as all the things I mentioned. Those will be pulling oil prices lower. But in the meantime, I'm still saying that any kind of military event will really spike oil prices, which will really spike high quality oil production companies like the ones I talk about in my newsletter. And you could benefit as an investor by getting involved in the right kinds of companies before they spike in price. I believe that we are very close to a war with Iran. And even if we don't have a war with Iran, making it look like we're going to have a war with Iran, even if it's for negotiation tactics. That's where we're loading all our military around them and getting rid of all of their proxies. Chopping off 6 of the 7 heads of the snake surrounding them, and we're not going to go to war. That's still going to result in the prices of oil going up higher because people are going to expect that we're getting closer to a war, even if we don't. So there's still an opportunity there. Oil prices will be the next big quick moving event, next big quick moving asset where all of a sudden they just spike. And there's other wars too that could spike oil prices. But this is the big one. This is what you want to be keeping an eye on. The whole world is watching this. It's not a coincidence that we have 6 stealth bombers on Diego Garcia. So you're going to want to own oil. You're going to want to own gold. Gold is sort of like nature's insurance. It's also a risk-off asset, and it's something as a flight to safety when there's a military explosion. You're definitely going to want to own oil. If it gets real, it gets heavy, and they actually start talking about shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. And if you want to get the Peter Leeds app, it's all the information from our world-famous newsletter, sliced up, searchable, and in your pocket. In the app and anything else you can get through my website, it's all there designed to help you benefit from the time that we're in right now.